Hello everyone, welcome! It's been a while since I've created a 10 cards 1 kit video with the Simon Says stamp kit of the month, but that's exactly what I'm doing in this video. Hopefully my voice will hold out, I'm just getting over a cold, but I have the October card kit here on my desk and it's called So Talkative. So I will quickly go through what the kit includes. You always get a $5 discount off your next order. You always get some candy. And then this time you get a brush. I love these brushes. I don't have a complete set. I just have a mishmash of these brushes, but I like this one because it has a little cap. I'm going to keep the cap so that I don't get ink everywhere. You get 3 Susie Plantamera watercolor cards. I believe it's printed on the Distress watercolor cardstock from Tim Holtz, but it has a smooth side and a rough side, and it's printed on the smooth side. You get 3 envelopes, and I like these because they're the no lick 'em stick 'em kind. Just have to peel off the release paper. And then this was a brilliant move on Simon Says Stamps' part. They give you 3 of these little 5.5 by 4.25 card fronts. And I believe it's all of the colors from their cardstock collection. I used this a lot to create these 10 cards. And I also found some colors that I need to have in my life. So I'm going to be ordering some cardstock from Simon Says Stamp. But it was just brilliant because it gives you a little taste of all of their colors. I loved this. Here is their stencil. This one is called Talk Bubbles, and it's a 6 by 6 inch stencil. I loved this one. I used it a lot on these cards as well. And then the stamp set is called So Talkative. The sentiments are really fun and unique, and you can put them on the outsides of your cards or the insides. You get a cute die, and this one says friend. And it cuts out the friend in lots of different layers. And it is a really cute font. I'm going to be using this on my very last card. Next, you get another 3D embossing folder. I love this one. It's called Kaleidoscope. And it embosses some really beautiful texture into your card panels. You get 2 sheets of heavyweight cardstock, and this one is called Holographic Lava. I'm going to use the white cardstock for card bases, and then you get a little mesh bag to put it in. It has a cute little zipper pull. But I love these little bags that they come in lately. So let's get started on card number 1. So I went straight for the blending brush and the Talk Bubbles stencil. I'm going to pull out the new Distress Oxide ink. This one's called Villainous Potion. And this is the first time I've used it, and I wanted to see what it looked like in person. So I'm going to be doing a few Talk Bubbles down the front of this card. I'm using a piece of the light gray cardstock. I'm going to be recreating one of the card designs that came on the example page in this kit, and it was designed by Heather Rue, but I wanted to do it with the purple. So I'm starting out with my speech bubble or my talk bubble. Let's peel this stencil off and see how it turned out. I used a lot of tape around it to keep my stencil in place and then to protect the gray cardstock so I didn't over stencil on this, but look how cute that is. Next, I'm going to pop this in my mini MISTI and stamp out all of my sentiments with the same Villainous Potion ink. So the card design is really simple, but I really loved the way it looked, and so that's why I wanted to recreate it. I do end up stamping out these sentiments several times just to build up the ink, but I'm just going to show once stamping. Here it is ready to pull out of the mini MISTI. So I wanted some hearts, and so I'm pulling in an older stamp set from Simon Says Stamp. This was from one of their kits. And I'm just going to use the 2 really cute sketchily drawn hearts from this set. I have my little mini acrylic block, and I'm going to stamp it again with the purple ink. And just stamp the larger one first around this panel. Isn't that cute? And then I'll come in with the smaller heart. So this stamp set is called Dandelion Messages. And I did do a card video using that kit a few months ago. I'll link to that at the end of this video. Let's just stamp a few more hearts in the open spaces of this card. And then all I have left to do is to emboss one more sentiment inside the speech bubble. I'm going to stamp out Hi Friend. I'm using my new Rabbit Hole Designs anti-static powder. I'm loving this thing. So let's ink it up with some Versamark ink. And I do stamp this out twice just to make sure it's good and sticky, and then I can pour over the white embossing powder. I allowed my heat tool to heat up for a minute before I brought it to the paper. And then I'm going to use that piece of purple cardstock to mat this panel. I already made card bases out of the 2 sheets of cardstock from the kit. And then I can attach this panel with a little more dot liner to the card base. This purple cardstock is one that I think I want to have in my collection. It's such a striking purple. So I'm going to add just 3 clear enamel dots on the front, and that's all there is to card number 1. Here's a close-up look. I'm going to go back and decorate the insides with more of the sentiments, however. So card number 2, I'm using the Talk Bubbles stencil again, and this time I'm going to be doing a little bit of overlapping. So I'm starting with Villainous Potion, and I'm not putting it down really dark. I'm just using a light touch for this. I want it to be kind of a lighter purple. Next, I'm going to overlap it with some Kitsch Flamingo. I'm using some of the brand new Distress Oxide inks that were released throughout this year. And then I can overlap the corner there onto the Villainous Potion. And it makes another color. It's just so fun to overlap these colors, or these inks. The pink, I don't have to use a light touch to because it's not a very dark pink. And I do clean off my stencils in between. Next is the Salvage Patina. And when it overlaps the Kitsch Flamingo, it makes such a pretty color, kind of a purpley color. And again, I'm putting this down thick because it's not a very dark color. And then my last speech bubble is going to be Prize Ribbon. And this one I'm putting down with a light touch again, just to make it a little bit softer. After I'm done with my ink blending, I do bring my heat tool to the panel just to help dry the ink faster. And then I'm going to be stamping sentiments in each of these talk bubbles. And this is a piece of the cream cardstock. I'm going to use some VersaFine Onyx Black ink over all of my sentiments. And the top one is going to say, "You make life fun." Oh, but let's put down the anti-static powder first, of course. And ink it up really good. And again, I do ink it up several times. The largest of the sentiments says, "Sending so many happy thoughts, I can't contain them all." And then the blue one says, "This card is full of love. Can you feel it?" And then the last one says, "Hi, friend." I'll pour over some clear embossing powder. This just gives it some shine and a little touch of dimension. This is such a simple card, but little touches like that just make it really special. I'm melting the embossing powder very slowly. I'm trying not to warp this panel at all. All of these panels do inevitably warp when I use my heat tool. This one doesn't warp too bad, however. So I'm going to add this to a piece of the blue cardstock. And I'm putting lots of dot liner just to hold this down flat. And then I'll add it to another top folding card base. I'm going to bring in some gems. These are some black gems. I believe these are from Pretty Pink Posh. I'm using my little heart tray, which I designed and I sell over at my Etsy shop. I'll have the link to that in the description box below. And I'm just adding 3 to the front of this card, and here is a close-up look. I think this is one of my favorites of this set. On my next card, I pulled out my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers to color this cute little fox in. And I'm going to color in the wreath around him. But I'm just putting the color down and then blending it out with the Zig blender pen or blender brush. But I didn't know how dark I wanted it to be, so I'm adding the lightest colors first, and then I go in with darker colors just to add more reds to it. And then on his feet, I'm coming in with a brown. Then I'll blend that out with the, I believe this is the yellow-orange. I'll add some shading under his neck and just blend that down. This blender brush really works great, but you do have to wipe it off between the colors so that you don't contaminate the colors. Like when I did the light brown on his eyes, I had to wipe off the oranges from the brush. I'll add more of the oatmeal brown in his ears and on the tip of his tail. So I wanted to add a little darker of a color to his feet, so that's what I'm doing next, and I'll just blend that up. And then some little pink for his cheeks. I'm going to color in some of the leaves on camera, but it's just very simple. I went in with a dark color along the veins, and then I just blend it out. Very simple, fun coloring. So in case you're interested in knowing the colors I used on the fox, the lightest color was yellow-orange, and then I went in with orange, and then my darkest color was crimson red. I like how those 3 colors blend together. They make them almost look kind of glowing. I'm going to cut out the wreath off camera, and here it is, as well as the little fox. The fox, however, I'm going to save for another card, so I'm going to put him aside, and we're going to focus on the wreath. I do have some distress watercolor paper from Tim Holtz that I'm going to pull out. I'm going to create a few backgrounds with this. So I'm going to pull out my splat box, and I have the new Mica Distress stains from Tim Holtz, and I haven't used them yet. These are the 2 Halloween sets, but they're perfect for fall as well. I'll link to them below if they're still available. But I'm going to create a couple of backgrounds using these beautiful mica stains. And I want to use kind of the fall colors, the oranges and the golds. I'll add a few spritzes of green to this one. And it dries back a lot lighter than how it goes on. I'll set this aside to dry and start on another panel. And I lost control of the nozzle there. Got all over my desk. This purple almost looks black, but it does dry paler, so you can tell that it is actually purple. Next I have this, I think it's the Candle Flame mica stain, but this is such a pretty gold. So I'm spritzing the panel, but then I also open up the lid and put down some droplets with the nozzle. This just adds bigger droplets. And here is the orange. And then I needed more color. I didn't like the white on this panel, so I'm bringing in some orange spritzing and some green flicks. And then some purple even. I love this purple. And I'm just completely saturating this panel. But I am going to heat up the drying process with my heat tool. And here's the first card again, all dried. I'm going to do a second layer to this with some of these purple droplets. And again, the purple will dry back paler. But when these panels catch the light, they're so shimmery and pretty. On my third panel, I wanted to have a white border. So I taped it down with some of the Spellbinder's Best Ever Craft tape. I'm just going to spritz this with the same colors I've used. And I'm also using the rough side of the paper. I like to see the texture of the paper. You can use, of course, either side. Now here's more of the purple. And once it has dried, I can peel off the tape. And I was a little bit too rough here and I ripped the corner, but I am going to fix that. But it just provides the most perfect white border around the panel. But I liked that touch of white matting for the wreath because the wreath I left a border on when I cut it out. So here it is, and I'm trying to catch it in the light so you can see the shimmer. So I'm going to use this last one for this card. Here are the other two panels. Aren't they pretty? But I will be using those on other projects. I'll stamp out the sentiment that says, "You're simply the best." And I'll emboss this with some white embossing powder on another piece of purple cardstock. I loved having all of these panels already cut down to A2 size for me. I'm using an acrylic block and some Versamark ink to do this. So let's pour over the white embossing powder. And then once I'm done with this, I'm going to fussy cut around this sentiment. So let's melt this embossing powder. Lately, I've been using the embossing powder from Brutus Monroe called Alabaster, and I like that stuff. I'll pop up the wreath with some foam pieces and center this on the card. And I like how the purple berries on this wreath kind of coordinate with the purple spatter on the background. I popped up the sentiment with some foam pieces as well. I'll add this to a top folding landscape card base, just using some glue for this. I go back and forth between my dot liner and my liquid glue to adhere things down. I just keep them both on my desk and I like them both, so it doesn't matter what you use. And then I found some purple stickles in my stash. I didn't even remember I had these. I was just searching for something to put over these berries. And so I'm putting a little bit of purple stickles over them for a bit of shimmer. And here's a close-up look at the finished card. I love that shimmer of the background. I don't know if they still have those distressed mica stains in stock. They were kind of a limited edition, but if they are, I will link them below. Okay, so let's get back to the little fox. I colored in another of the Susie Plantamera watercolor cards, and I used colored pencils this time. I'm going to round the bottom corners of both of this panel as well as the orange cardstock, and then I'm just going to glue the watercolor panel onto it. I wanted to use colored pencils on this particular one because I knew I wanted my fox to be on this card and I wanted him to really stand out. So the colored pencils are a lot more subtle than my fox. And I colored in the bounty sentiment with the same colors that I used on my fox. I'll pop up the fox, and then I'm going to, of course, round the corners, the bottom two corners of my card base, and then I can glue this panel down. But these watercolor cards are great for colored pencils as well as your watercolors. I added a black and white twine bow at the top and a few gems, and this card is all done. Susie's watercolor cards are really fun to color in. I enjoyed those this time. Okay, so let's use this second background that I created using the mica sprays. And I'm going to emboss it using the Kaleidoscope 3D embossing folder. And this is just stunning on this panel. Look at the texture and the shine of that. This is going to be a 2-for-1 card. So I'm going to slice this panel in half and create 2 cards with this. I created another panel using just the flickering candle because I knew I wanted a gold stripe to go between the cardstock and my embossed piece. So I'll cut out 2 strips from this. And this is the same Tim Holtz watercolor distress paper. I have a few panels that I selected from the cardstock pack there, and I'm not sure which ones I want to use yet, but I've kind of narrowed it down. I ended up using the orangish red panel and the brown, and I'm going to emboss a sentiment at the top of these. I kind of chose these cardstocks because I wanted to emboss them with white embossing powder, and the white embossing powder really pops off of these colors. So I prepped both my panels, and now I can melt the embossing powder very slowly again, trying not to warp the panels. I really like both of these sentiments because they're nice and bold on the front of your cards. You can clearly see the anti-static powder that I put down before I embossed them, but you can clean them off easily. I'm just using a tissue to do this. So let's put these cards together. I'm going to use a little bit of liquid glue to attach these panels. I didn't want to use my dot liner this time just for fear of crushing all of that texture. So the liquid glue is best in this case. And now for the strip, and I'm just butting this up against the embossed panel, making sure that both ends go off the side of the card. And now for the second card, we'll just attach the embossed panel and the strip of gold cardstock. I'm not sure which one I like better, but I'm awfully fond of that orangey red cardstock. I think I need to get some of that as well. And then once these are dry, I'll just flip them over and trim off the overhang. I like using long scissors to do this. It just helps me cut in a straight line easier and not cut into the card base or the card panel. I'll use more glue to attach these to some top folding card bases. I think it would be fun to create a whole gift set of cards using this technique, and you could get through the cards really fast by cutting them in half like this. I found some gold glossy dots in my stash, and I'm going to put a few of those around the sentiments. And here's a close-up look at these cards. Yes, I really love that orangey red cardstock the best. My next card is going to be very simple. I'm going to start out with a piece of black cardstock and heat emboss a sentiment on this. This sentiment says, "Sending so many happy thoughts, I can't contain them all." I'll ink it up with some more Versamark ink. And I like to at least stamp it out twice so it's good and sticky. And then the embossing powder I'm using is really fun. This is called Pink Peony embossing powder from Ranger, and it shows up beautifully on dark cardstocks. Look how bright and vivid that pink is. Well, it's a soft pink, but you can really see it on this black cardstock. So let's melt this. They have a whole line of these embossing powders in like orange and yellow and red and green that show up just beautifully on black cardstock. So I'm going to add some, let's see, this is Hero Arts Unicorn Pigment ink over my sentiment using one of the speech bubbles. Trying to get it as white as possible. So I do put a few coats on it. Not that it helps, I think I just end up moving the ink around, but I'm trying to get it really white. I'll clean the pigment ink off of my sentiment just using a tissue to carefully brush off the ink or wipe off the ink. And then let's peel up the stencil and see what it looks like. I love the look of that on the black cardstock. I'm going to use a wonky stitch die to cut this out. I haven't used my wonky stitched dies in a very long time. And then I'm going to mat this panel with a really soft pink panel. I'll glue it down. This was a very fast card to put together. So the cardstock that's matting it matches really well with the embossing powder. I'll attach this to another white card base. I had to bring in some from my stash, of course. Then I'm going to use some pink enamel dots around the sentiment. I seem to prefer the pre-made enamel dots to the Nouveau drops. The Nouveau drops can get smushed even after they're dry, I've found. So I really like these pre-made enamel dots. And that's all there is to this card. Here's a close-up. On card number 8, I'm going to use the stencil again, but this time I'm going to stamp out my sentiments first onto a piece of white cardstock. So I'm going to stamp out Hi Friend with some VersaFine Onyx black ink and the sentiment that says Thinking of You. I already used some anti-static powder first, and then I'll pour on some clear embossing powder. I'm going to be cutting these out after I stencil over them, but since I embossed them, the sentiments won't smear at all when I put the ink on top of it. Also, I don't have to wait for the Distress Oxide ink to dry before I stamp on it. I'm putting this prize ribbon ink down very lightly. Don't want it to be too dark. My orange ink is called Ripe Persimmon. I love using the blue and the orange together because, of course, they're complementary colors. When I was dating my husband, the front room of his house had a bright orange wall, and he had a beautiful blue couch. And I always thought that was so unusual but very striking together. So whenever I see these two colors together, it reminds me of that. Let's peel off the stencils. I am going to fussy cut around these, leaving a white border. I went ahead and embossed a piece of blue cardstock with the kaleidoscope folder. And I'll attach that to a white card base, leaving a little bit of a border around the edges. I popped up my sentiments with some foam pieces, and I wish that I had put 3 sentiments down. I think it would have looked more balanced, and I may go back and do that yet. And then I added some clear sequins around the panel, and this card is finished. Card number 9 is going to be another watercolor panel from Susie Plantamera. So I'm not going to color this in at all. All I'm going to do is add some leaf die cuts around it. These die cuts are from Spellbinders, and they're called Autumn Leaves, and I thought they were just the perfect size to put around this sentiment. So I cut them out using, of course, the cardstock from this kit. I chose several different colors, but I end up only using the red, the soft green, and the orangey yellow. And I'm just going to glue these down flat. I don't want to obscure my sentiment at all, but I don't want them to hang off the edge. I don't want to have to trim anything off. I'm just carefully putting these around this panel. This card was a really fun one to put together, and no coloring involved. However, at the end, I decide I want to add some spatter to this. I'm using some gold silk, and this is from the Spellbinders shop. It puts down the prettiest golden yellow droplets. And I'm also using their sparkle silk. This is a silver. I wanted to add a bit of brightness to it, so I'm going to pull out my pumpkin, or carved pumpkin, Distress Oxide spray. And then I bring in one of the brown mica stains. I got a big dollop on the red of the matte. So if I were to do this again, I would spatter it before I attached it to the red cardstock. So let's attach this to a white card base. And then I have some more enamel dots, but these are gold sparkle enamel dots. I'll just put a few of these around the panel as well. Just needed some larger dollops on there. I like to use my all-in-one tool from Spellbinders to pick up my enamel dots. And this just allows me to place it better on the card. It keeps my fingers out of the way so that I can see where it looks best. I'll add one more here at the bottom, and that's all there is to it. Here's a close-up look. It's kind of different, isn't it? It's so much fun creating fall cards, I think. And now for card number 10, and I'm finally pulling out the friend die. I cut it out with some white cardstock, and I'm going to attach this to a red faux stitched banner. This banner die set is from Spellbinders. I've had these in my stash for a long time, but I just love them. So both of my sentiments are going to be white, but I'm using several of the cardstock from the kit for this card. I embossed a piece of gray cardstock, and then I'm going to attach this to the soft navy cardstock. I really love these four colors together, the navy, the gray, the red, and the pink, and that makes the white sentiments really pop. On my pink banner, I'm going to stamp out the sentiment that says, "Just wanted to say hello." I'll use my anti-static powder first. Then I'm just going to take a chance and ink it up on an acrylic block with some Versamark ink. So I'm sorry my head gets in the way here, but I have to look over it to make sure I have it level. And then I can pour over the white embossing powder. The white embossing powder looks really nice on this hot pink cardstock. So I'll melt this embossing powder, and then I'm going to attach it to this card using some liquid glue. The red banner I popped up with some foam adhesive. I want the friend banner to be straight, but the pink one's going to be kind of slanting down the side of the card. I'll press that into place. I'll attach this to the card base, and then I'm going to bring in some more of the black and white baker's twine. For a little touch of sparkle on this card, I wanted to bring in some really big, chunky embellishments. So I chose these from Spellbinders. These are called Bubble Bath. I'll have all of the links to the supplies that I used on these cards listed in the description box below. And here's a close-up look at the last card. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I hope that you had fun and were inspired by these cards. I hope you have some time today to sit down and create some fun cards of your own. Take care, everyone. I'll be back again soon with another video. Bye.